Thank you for joining us here for Live Impact News on this Tuesday, Mardi Gras Tuesday, Fat Tuesday is what they call it. My name is Eugene Daniel. I'm joined in studio by producer Sarah Calloway and meteorologist Craig Moeller. Craig, we were looking at the live shot from New Orleans, the Big Easy, just earlier today. We know the festivities are kicking off there, but I tell you what, I'm sure they don't want the type of weather we have right now.
No, and they actually have. It's kind of damp down there. Temperatures are in the 50s right now. We're going to see highs down in the Big Easy in the low 70s. It's funny, you said New Orleans, and I was like, one person in this station can say New Orleans and still make it work, and that's you because you're from Louisiana. The rest of us, New Orleans.
I'm trying to do as best as I can with my Louisiana accent not to be on display at this point.
That's all right, man. I love it. I love it. What a great day. I mean, it is Fat Tuesday, and you talk about Marty being Tuesday and Gras being fat. All right? It's Fat Tuesday. We're ready, and we have a taste of spring here in Hampton Roads. You wouldn't know it yet, though, because it is still really kind of cloudy. We had some fog out there. It is starting to lift. It's getting better. We've got rain returning later in the week and a chance for showers into the weekend. Don't worry too much about that yet because I don't think it's going to be a total washout. I just think there's going to be opportunities for a few showers here and there. Here's what we have for you today. I am still going with skies becoming mostly sunny. Just within the last 20, 25 minutes, we're seeing some significant improvements in visibility, the clouds starting to lift. That is a trend that should continue. Now, honestly, as a forecaster, I will tell you, this stuff is hanging around a little bit longer than what I thought on daybreak this morning. Full transparency, I was thinking by 9 o'clock or so, 9:30, most of this would be lifting. Hasn't been the case just yet. I think, Sarah, do we have that time lapse from the ocean front? We had the clouds out there and the low cloud cover. You could see just kind of a marine layer hanging in. We've had, this light south and southwest wind supposed to scour this stuff out, but we really hadn't seen it. And the waves out there, we still have small craft advisories up for the ocean. Now, we take a look at the satellite and the radar imagery. Take a look at this, and I'm going to go and we'll zoom into our local viewing area here. And you see those clouds that are out there. Okay, I want to show you, this is just, again, the fog that is basically there. Once that fog lifts out, we're going to see big improvements. So I know it's foggy right now. You see that swirl that's kind of spinning out from right across northeast North Carolina. That's where our high pressure is centered. So it won't be too much longer. This fog will start lifting. And you see how the future cast doesn't really depict that fog very well at all. You're going to see skies becoming mostly sunny. Now later into the evening, skies will increase with cloud cover. Temperatures today will top out. Once we get the sunshine, upper 50s to low 60s, lows tonight in the upper 40s, and then tomorrow we're going to see temperatures back into the mid to upper 60s. So when we talk about a taste of spring, that's what I'm talking about. Chances for a few showers there late Wednesday evening into the overnight, mainly down to the south, and then additional showers will be possible as we go into Thursday, especially during the afternoon and into the evening. You see the scattered wet weather out there. That's going to be the case, and then into Friday, some more hit and miss showers. There's a look across the Elizabeth River right now. And Sarah, again, if we can take Max 1 full, I just want to mention there are some breaks already starting to show up that we were not seeing even a little while ago. So let me go ahead and pick my pointer here so you can see these bright spots. These kind of little holes are starting to show up in the clouds. This stuff was not out there even 15, 20 minutes ago. So starting to see, and even a little bit of sunlight reflecting right here on the Elizabeth River. That is a sign that the clouds are starting to break. So we just need to hang in there. As we take a look, 39 degrees, southwest winds 10 miles per hour. Visibility still down, but again, where before we had multiple locations, less than a mile visibility. At one point, I think Emporia, Roanoke Rapids was down to 1/8 of a mile. I mean, it was very, very bad. Now, everybody's showing improvement. That's a trend that will continue. So highs today around 60 degrees or so with the skies becoming mostly sunny. Lows tonight near 49, and then tomorrow back up into the mid to upper 60s, variably cloudy and looking good as we go forward. 60 on Thursday, 65 on Friday, and then that chance for a few showers scattered on Saturday. Sunday, a chance for lingering morning showers, but we should see clearing later on Sunday. Monday looks good, but colder. Tuesday colder as well. But after that, next week, we warm it right back up.
I'm okay with that. And one more thing here, Craig, is we can pull up that 7-day, if you can. You see those days there, you kind of spoke to it, Thursday through Sunday, those chances of rain. Now, I know typically I might look at something like that and say, it's going to be raining. But you had recently said we've needed the rain here in Hampton Roads. I know we just got a lot over the weekend.
We did.
But we've needed it.
So what we had over the weekend, and I was going to try to pull the exact numbers up for you, what we had over the weekend, Sunday and yesterday, a total of 1.4 inches. So that did help us out, and I'm just going to pull this up real quick so you can see it on your screen. Here's the almanac. You can see with the additional amount of rainfall that we saw yesterday, that 0.27 inches, that brings our deficit down to 1.84. It was much higher than that before we got that 1.4 inches just, within that period Sunday into Monday. So that definitely has helped. We could still use some more, so not terrible. But this doesn't look like it's going to be steady and heavy. This next batch coming up starting later Thursday into Friday and Saturday, kind of more off and on, light to moderate. So it's not a bad thing.
Let's do this. If we can maybe just entertain us a little bit, Sarah, can we pull up VMix C real quick? This shot down here, we said in the Big Easy, it's a close right now. There you have it, Mardi Gras. This is a live shot down there in New Orleans at the moment. When they brought it out, if they're able to do so, you can see people are already lined up on the streets. Today, there are going to be some parades and activities taking place. I saw a cousin of mine. They were out yesterday, sharing some of the things that are going on there. But look, the parade route underway, getting ready to roll down this street. Look at all the people out there this morning.
And they're dressed up. It's funny. Everybody looks at the streets overnight and they're wet. And they go, oh, it must have rained. It's like, nope. That is street cleaners hosing down the night's festivities from the night before and getting ready. You can see, Sarah, if you want to take this graphic up, I pulled a few fun facts about Mardi Gras, too, if you just want to take a quick look. Mardi Gras, again, Mardi being the French word for Tuesday, gras being for fat. The first Mardi Gras that was continuously celebrated was in Mobile, Alabama in 1703, and we talked about this on Daybreak. Eugene, the largest outside of the NOLA region, St. Louis, Missouri, with Soulard having a massive parade in that part of St. Louis. And St. Louis really founded by French settlers that came up from New Orleans.
Man, we love to see it. My family, for those who don't know, is mostly from and lives in Louisiana. So that is why we have this bit of a special thing in your family, St. Louis. So there's a really cool tie there to the Mardi Gras entire celebration. Craig, we appreciate you. Thank you so much. We need to take a quick break here, but we have so much more in store here on Live Impact News. Well, thank you for sticking with us here for Live Impact News on 13 News Now Plus. There is some tragic news this morning as we have lost a civil rights icon. Jesse Jackson died this morning at the age of 84. He was surrounded by his family at his side. He leaves behind an incredible legacy, and with more on that, here's ABC's Karen Travers.
Keep hope alive. Keep hope alive.
For Reverend Jesse Jackson, hope was much more than a word. It was a mission. Born to a single mother in South Carolina, he was ordained in 1968.
I am.
As a young man, Jackson was deeply involved with the fight for civil rights. He worked for the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, headed by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Jackson was at the Memphis Hotel on the night of April 4th, 1968, when King was assassinated.
I officially announce my candidacy.
Jackson may be best known for his presidential campaigns, running as a Democrat in 1984 and 1988. His Rainbow Coalition surprised the political world by winning several primaries. However, Jackson's legacy was marred by controversy. In 1984, he famously referred to New York City as Hymietown. He later apologized. In 2001, it was revealed he'd had an affair with a staffer, which resulted in the birth of a daughter, and that he'd paid the child's mother thousands of dollars out of his group's coffers. And Jackson's relationship with President Barack Obama was a tempestuous one. While he supported the president's 2008 campaign, an open mic caught Jackson criticizing the candidate.
Been talking down to black people on this faith base.
Still on election night, Jackson had tears in his eyes as President Obama took the stage. In his later years, Jackson worked to secure the release of hostages from the Middle East and was a vocal critic of the war in Iraq. Throughout it all, Jackson never ceased reminding the poor and the marginalized that they too had a voice.
I am. somebody. I am somebody.
Karen Travers, ABC News.
Joining us today on the stream, we have Gary Flowers. He is a former Vice President, National Field Director for Jackson's Rainbow Push Coalition. He joins us now from Richmond, Virginia, to talk about the legacy that Jackson now leaves behind. Gary, if you can hear me, thank you so much for joining us here this morning.
Eugene, it's an honor to be on this morning. And what a tragic day for the family of Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr. But what a triumphant day it is for history, because now many people of all stripes, of all ages, can learn more about the great works of Reverend Jackson and his institutions.
And I'm so thankful that we have you here to talk about that. I think you are absolutely right. For people who may not have been as familiar with the things that he was able to accomplish and the experiences that he had throughout his life as well. So let's start, though, with your experience with him and with the coalition. What years were you working with the coalition, and what your role entailed?
Yes, I was hired in late 1996 and worked through 2007. And for many of your listeners who may have pets, particularly dogs, we worked in dog years. We did 7 years of work in 1 year. So I really worked for him for 70 years. But that said, my first role was National Field Director. After the confluence and merger of the National Rainbow Coalition, based in Washington, D.C., that staffed his 84 and 88 campaign, it merged with Operation Push in Chicago. And I was hired as the National Field Director in charge of direct actions in public protests, pickets, and other direct action procedures and campaigns. From there, I was promoted to Vice President of Programs in 2001. And so I held both positions until 2007.
So let me ask you, what was it like working with and for Reverend Jackson and the work that you all were doing, as you just described? So many people have believed that it continues to be meaningful work. What was it like working with him on those issues?
It was truly incredible. It was like taking a PhD course in world economics, public policy, politics, and even sports. He was so much a thinker that those of you and those of your audience who are listening who may have followed Star Trek, there used to be a 3-level chessboard on the original Star Trek. Reverend Jackson played world and global politics, economics, and social justice on 3 different levels at the same time. So it was transformational in short.
One of the things that has already kind of struck me this morning, I've seen a lot of the tributes that have come out, and the Reverend Al Sharpton, of course, very, very, very close to Reverend Jackson, posted not long ago calling him his mentor. And I think when people think about that, right, they don't always look at the stair steps, the levels here. You have Al Sharpton calling Jackson his mentor, and Jackson himself was mentored by none other than Dr. Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. What are some of the traits that you've seen through Reverend Jackson that we can directly tie to Dr. King? And can you speak to this passing on of this knowledge that they all have had throughout the years?
Yes, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said eloquently that he was sent to earth to disturb the comfortable and comfort the disturbed. Reverend Jackson, more than any other staffer of Dr. King, kept that mantle and that mission through the continuation of Operation Breadbasket by the Southern Christian Leadership Conference until he founded Operation Push in 1972. And it was his plan to shake up America to live out its promise. After all, in 1963, Dr. King's speech that was mislabeled by the media as the I Have a Dream speech, that was not the title that Dr. King chose, and it was not the essence of the speech. The essence of the speech was the broken promise of America to black people. Dr. King opens the August 28th, 1963 speech by saying, "I stand in front of this temple," referring to the Lincoln Memorial, fashioned after King Ramses II palace in ancient Black Egypt. He said, "I'm looking forward to the Congress and the Capitol building. To my left is the White House, and to my right is the Jefferson Memorial. All three of these institutions memorialize people that promise black people to be citizens and to have an even playing field in America." And he said then, "So I stand here 100 years after the Emancipation Proclamation to say that the promissory note of the U.S. government and its institutions has been returned marked insufficient funds." Dr. King then transmuted those values to Reverend Jackson, who carried on the fight for economic justice, political justice, social justice in all phases of American society and around the world.
You mentioned Dr. King's famous speech there. Let's talk about Reverend Jackson, some of the speeches that he gave throughout his long career. One in which I know just this morning I was listening to, he often would cite, "I am somebody." What is the message you, in spending time with him, in studying him, that you felt that he wanted to make sure every time he was out that you heard from him?
Well, first and foremost, let's go back to his birth. The reason he ends up saying as a mantra, "I am somebody," is because he was born to a teenage mother, 15 years old, who was impregnated by her next door neighbor, a 34-year-old married man. She and her baby were kicked out of their local church. She and her baby, Jesse, had to live with her mother. And that his first name when he was born was Burns. Jackson was his third name. And so he was born literally on the wrong side of the tracks, called a bastard child. And yet he rose from that stigma to be arguably one of the most recognizable people on the planet. And so when he was speaking to young people in every city in which we traveled, our first stop after a breakfast meeting, usually with business leaders, our first stop at 10 o'clock was a local high school where he would say to young kids, particularly born on the so-called wrong side of the tracks, that you are somebody, that you may have been born in the slum, but the slum was not born in you. And that message of hope and aspiration, he said that if your mind can conceive it and your heart can believe it, then you too can achieve it. And so his quotes and his aura was so infectious that he made other people to action, which he learned from Dr. King. He would often say, Gary, you can't give off heat if you're not on fire. And he was on fire for justice, not only in this country, but around the world.
So incredible to hear you share the words that he shared with you, and speaking to what you were talking about in his upbringing. Back to Reverend Sharpton, he wrote in his he's written several things about Reverend Jackson this morning, but in that first message that I shared, he said he kept the dream alive and taught young children from broken homes like me that we don't have to be broken spirits. And I think that speaks to directly what you were just saying there. Can we go back to his early years You know, he went to North Carolina A&T, played.
No. Correction.
Correct me, please.
He had a football scholarship as a quarterback to the University of Illinois.
And they would not allow him to play quarterback, correct?
And they would not allow him to stay in the all-white dormitories.
Mm.
And so being a cultural fish out of water, he returned to the South, to North Carolina A&T State University, where he continued his football career. But he was around people who looked like him, who were not racists and bigots.
And how did that shape, in your knowledge of him, how did those experiences shape the man in which we know today?
Well, in two fronts. He has athletic prowess, so he gets a football scholarship in the Big Ten, University of Illinois. So that speaks to academic preparation and athletic, prowess. But also, while there, it speaks to, in some senses, go where you're comfortable. And he was so uncomfortable there culturally, albeit because they were making him uncomfortable in Champaign, Illinois, that he returned to the South in familiar confines. Even though he was born in the high country of Greenville, South Carolina, the neighboring state of North Carolina, he was very familiar with North Carolina A&T. And there he was nurtured and protected and inspired by black scholars, among them Samuel DeWitt Proctor, Reverend Dr. Samuel DeWitt Proctor, who was the president of North Carolina A&T. And as such, his leadership skills rose. While he was a student at University of Illinois, he pledged the historically black service fraternity, Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated, where the black males in that fraternity pretty much functioned as a study group. That's how he was able to pass his courses the first year. And so he returns to the South, now nurtured and embodied with a sense of leadership. And that catapults him to be student body president at North Carolina A&T, quarterback on the football team, and a member of Omega Psi Phi.
I'm so glad that we have you here to break down all of this for us and just the life of Reverend Jackson there. And, I got to ask, for you and your personal relationship with him, were there any conversations and moments that today you're thinking on just a little bit more with the news of his passing?
Well, if you don't mind, before I get to that question, I want to go back to his college days.
Let's do it.
And as an inspirational leader, taught and nurtured by inspirational leaders, he had a certain sense of intentionality. He graduates from North Carolina A&T. And then in 1965, in March of 1965, actually March 7th, 1965, what we call Bloody Sunday took place in a little town that nobody knew, Selma, Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
Marchers, 2 by 2, 200 in depth, were going to protest at the request of Dr. King for a Voting Rights Act. They were going to march 32 miles from Selma to the state capital of Montgomery. As you've seen, and many of your listeners may have seen, if not, they should research. When they got to the top of the bridge and crossed it, they were beaten severely by state troopers dispatched by then Governor George Wallace, who vowed segregation now, segregation tomorrow, segregation forever. On the front line of that march was Dr. King's National Field Director, Hosea Williams, and a young Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee Chair, John Lewis, who would rise to be Congressman John Lewis from Alabama. Reverend Jackson had entered seminary in Chicago, at the University of Chicago Seminary. And he heard about what was going on in Alabama, and he and 2 white classmates said that they were going to leave class and drive all the way down to Alabama to be a part of the movement. When he got there, with this spirit of intentionality, he walked up to Dr. King on the 3rd March, the one that was successful, and said, Dr. King, I'm Jesse Jackson, and I want to work for you. He presented himself to Dr. King. His salary was $37.50 a week. And as he told me, he said, Gary, there was not a long line to work for Dr. King. You got to go into Klan country, you may get your head beaten in, and you only make it $37 a week. And he had a baby. His first child, Santita, was 1.5 years old at that time. And so that intentionality pervaded his life, that he was fearless. At one point in Forsyth County, Georgia, he walked up to a Klansman and pulled his mask up, pulled his hood up. Intentionality. And that conveyed to me, because when I left the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law, I called Reverend Jackson's office 75 straight days, 2 times a day. Just as Dr. King had not found Jesse Jackson Sr., Jesse Jackson Sr. didn't find Gary Flowers. There was a spirit of intentionality, and beyond analysis, I've got to go into action to do something about the ills and isms of this sick nation.
And that fire clearly continued in him and showed everywhere he was. Sticking in that spot in history, you're talking about how he went up to Dr. King and made himself known, his services known. There wasn't a long line of people who were trying for that role, that job. In what ways would you say that Reverend Jackson was similar to Dr. King, and in what ways would you say that he was different in his delivery and approach?
Very different in birth. Dr. King's grandfather was a middle-class, free African-American in Atlanta who was a minister. Dr. King's father was a well-known minister in Atlanta. Dr. King was a middle-class African-American boy who entered the prestigious Morehouse College at 15 years old, having scored the highest on the exam to get in. Dr. King's academic record would stand for decades at Morehouse. And so with that middle-class background, it's a far cry from being born into wedlock, with the community looking at your mother and grandmother with scorn, called bastard child. And there's probably more of a corollary between Reverend Jackson's upbringing to President Bill Clinton than to Dr. King.
I think that kind of opens the door now for me to talk about the presidential runs and the presidential campaigns in the 80s.
I gave you that segue.
You did. I heard it. I heard it, and I'm picking the ball up with me. You're looking in the 80s, and here, Jesse Jackson, a black man, surprised a lot of people in certain areas when it came to primaries, etc. Take us back to those years, those runs. What made them so significant? What made him effective, and how it shaped politics moving forward?
If you don't mind, on the chronology of his life, let's not start in the 80s. Let's start in the early 70s, when Dr. King has been assassinated for 4 years, and Reverend Jackson leaves the Southern Christian Leadership Conference's Operation Breadbasket, but takes that mission and forms People United to Save Humanity. We would later change the name to People United to Serve Humanity. He buys an old Jewish temple on the south side of Chicago at the corner of 50th and Drexel. And he converts that into a Saturday church that has political action in the sermon. And that's novel, because most churches, particularly Black Baptist churches, met on Sunday. His Saturday morning forum seated 1,100 people with standing room only to hear Reverend Jackson give a politically inspired theological sermon. But on that program, you may have Harry Belafonte performing. You may have the Jackson 5 performing. You may have Sidney Poitier giving, a recitation. You may have Sonia Sanchez or any of the great poets, Sterling Brown, giving poetry. And so it was an amalgamation of politics and praise, theology and the notion of action. So from that, Reverend Jackson created out of the book of Dr. King. Remember, Dr. King's last speech was misnumbered and misnamed by the media as the mountaintop speech. That wasn't the name of the speech, nor was it the purpose. The purpose of that speech was to say that even the so-called lowly sanitation workers have the economic power to buy Seal Test ice cream and Coca-Cola. Thanks to the research by Reverend Jackson, Dr. King said, Mayor Loeb, the mayor of Memphis at the time, I've come here to say you're not treating his people right. And there needs to be a redistribution of pain. That should be the name of the speech of the mountaintop, the redistribution of economic pain. Reverend Jackson took that message of economic pain and took it to Chicago, where A&P used to be a grocery store chain. They were the largest in the nation, and the store located 2 blocks from Operation Push's headquarters. Reverend Jackson led a 17-week economic boycott, selective patronage campaign against the A&P store. It was the first time in American history that a corporate chain store was put out of business because of a boycott. This grows Reverend Jackson's economic power in the spirit of Dr. King. Also that year, in 1972, he took on the McGovern, who was a presidential candidate, the McGovern platform, and unseated the very powerful daily political machine in Chicago. Now, in Chicago terms, that's open warfare. And so there was a tension, but that's pretty polite. There was a war between the dailies and the Jackson machine that eventuated in the tensions that you spoke of in the earlier point with Barack Obama, because Barack Obama and Michelle Obama come out of the daily machine. So they were groomed by political adversaries of the Jackson machine. So in these early 70s, he goes from economic boycott of A&P to then, by the end of the decade, he is signing covenants because he has successfully boycotted Coca-Cola and Budweiser beer, 2 of the biggest brands on the planet. And because he had that power, he then pivoted to economic corporate covenants with national corporations to say, look, we have the power to not buy your product. You have the power to include us on the board of directors, as employees, and as vendors. And so that's how Reverend Jackson developed his national reputation as a power broker, that with the move of his pen or his voice could have major consumers in America boycott or selectively not patronize a corporation. But don't stop there. Also in the mid-70s, he created Push for Excellence, a national education program that said funding for schools in Black and brown neighborhoods should be commensurate with funding for public schools in white neighborhoods. And so he becomes the iconic Reverend Jackson by the end of the 1970s before we get to the campaigns. But now you can ask me about the campaign.
I'm loving every bit of this. I want you to know that at the moment, just taking us through the history of his life. There are so many touch points and so many questions that I have on that. But yes, let's talk about the political point of it now. He's built all of this to that stage, and then we get him at the national level there as he's running for president. Now you gave us a bit of a backstory as to the momentum that he had, but those were really transformative performances by Jackson in those presidential runs.
Is that a question?
That is. It's a statement and a question, a lead-in for you. How did that transform how we kind of see politics and then history beyond his runs in the 80s?
So the first campaign was based on relationships. Politics can be defined as who gets what, how much, and when, based on who you know. Reverend Jackson transmuted the national and international relationships he had forged under the tutelage of Dr. King. And just before that, he used those national relationships to say that Chicago needed to come under the hand of the Daily Machine politically. And so Chicago used to have something, and those who are listening from Chicago would recognize this, something called Chicago Fest. It was the largest concert that any city had in the nation. And Reverend Jackson knew that Stevie Wonder and Nancy Wilson and other leading R&B acts were scheduled to come to Chicago Fest. Reverend Jackson used his power of persuasion and convinced black Chicagoans not to buy tickets to the Chicago Fest until politics and economics and education were more diversified in Chicago. As such, he then promoted the campaign of Harold Washington to be the first black mayor of Chicago. And on that success, that's when his followers said, after the death of Mayor Washington in 1983, Reverend Jackson, maybe you should consider running for president. And that groundswelling led to his acceptance. And so the first campaign, let's be blunt, Eugene, they didn't know what they were doing.
Mm-hmm.
And he admits that. But they had the troops. They just didn't know the levers of politics. They didn't know how to, discern how do you get to the convention and the politics for the state delegates and all things that lead to a presidential campaign. But they had the rainbow. And he had gotten that rainbow concept in part from Black Panther chairman in Chicago, Fred Hampton, who had organized blacks and whites and browns and all stripes and called it the Rainbow Coalition. And so he borrowed that term and he went to Iowa and stood on bales of hay and talked to white farmers who had never seen a black man before. He went to the barrios of East Texas. He went to the wheat farms in Minnesota. He went to the hog farms in North Carolina. And so this Rainbow Coalition starts to build momentum. And that's what he carries to the convention. And that speech in 1984 was transformational. And then he parlays that and doubles down for 1988, except that this time they really know what they're doing. He has on board Dr. Ronald Walters, the preeminent black, let's erase black, the preeminent political scientist in America, who gave Reverend Jackson the political strategy. He had on his campaign then Ron Brown, who would become Secretary of Commerce and would have been the first Barack Obama had he not been killed in a plane crash. He had on that team Alexis Herman, who would become Secretary of Labor under Clinton. He had on that team Maxine Waters, who would become Congresswoman from California. He had on that team Julianne Malveaux, who would go on to be a PhD in economics. And so now he has the Army and he has lieutenants. And he wins. Your lead-in was not totally factual in terms of primaries. In 1988, Reverend Jackson came in first or second in 46 of the 51 primaries. Let me repeat that slowly. 46 of 51, he was 1 or 2. It was so devastating politically that what Andy Young would call the smart-ass white boys, Clinton, Gore, Dodd, Lieberman, all ganged up to say, we've got to do something with Jesse. On the cover of Time magazine, it says, what does Jesse want? Well, if he's running for president, that's what he wants. Duh. And so the caucus was chosen by this newfound white organization white male organization within the Democratic Party. It was called the Democratic Leadership Council. And they were conservative. And they created something out of whole cloth in March. They said, we're going to create something called Super Tuesday. Super Tuesday says that whatever candidate we want, we will all coalesce and nominate him to be our standard bearer. They chose the caucus. And you know, for those who know politics, it didn't end well. But what they did was they ganged up against Reverend Jackson because they knew that he had the momentum of the people. And so one of the lessons I learned first is that democracy percolates upwardly. It doesn't trickle down like Reagan said. And Reverend Jackson knew that. But they asked him to get out of the race in March. He said, no, I'm going all the way to the convention. And when he went to the convention in Atlanta, he changed the rules committee so that nominee did not have to just get 51% of the delegates. They had to get proportional votes from the delegates. That 20 years later is what Barack Obama won with. Because had it not been for proportional voting and seating of delegates, Hillary Clinton would have won 51% of the Democratic primary. And to this day, Barack Obama has still not fully thanked Reverend Jackson. I'm very interested to see what his comments will be upon the death of Reverend Jackson. Because when he went to Denver and accepted the Democratic nomination, there was not a whole lot of praise for Reverend Jackson. He didn't even call Dr. King's name explicitly. He said there was a preacher who gave us a speech in 1963. And so I'm bringing all of these political points back because your audience and your listeners need to know everything that happens has a predicate and a consequence. In a full examination of political history and life of Reverend Jackson, you have to know the predicate and the consequences that he caused.
And Gary, let me ask you, based on that, what you just said.
That's
and
my
how
short answer.
Yeah, and what you just said there at the end there, so, I mean, seriously, so powerful, the way that you were taking us through the history of his life. We showed the moment that Barack Obama comes out, he's now become president, and you see Jesse Jackson with tears streaming down his face.
And I was with him. They were for real. And let me tell you what was in that moment. That moment was his 15-year-old mother being scorned in Greenville, just wanting to have a fair chance in America. It was his grandmother who cleaned houses for white people. It was all of those who he called the locked out and the left behind. It was tears for Dr. King and the heroes and sheroes of the modern civil rights movement who said, if you just give us America, if you just even the playing field and give us a chance to vote, then whoever wins, wins. And so it was him remembering what he did in 84 and 88 to seed the ground. And so those tears were found in some of the words of James Weldon Johnston's Black National Anthem. Have we not come to a place for which our fathers, and I will add our mothers, sighed And so he was sighing and crying over this moment in history where a black man has had the people of the United States, red, black, brown, and yellow, nominate him to be president of the United States. And that's why he was crying.
You know, in about 7 minutes or so, we're going to be hearing from the Reverend Al Sharpton. He is going to be holding a press conference of his own in remembrance of his mentor, who he calls today. Gary, you've been phenomenal throughout this entire exchange, taking us step by step through all of this, and I cannot appreciate you more for taking the time. I do want to ask you just a few more questions here, and one of those is...
Before you do that,
let
me just give thanks to my most impactful mentor, the late Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr. What I just took you through is how he would have wanted me to answer the questions, in that regardless of the question, you give the content that you know will explain the full story. And that's what I did.
He mentored you well then. And I want to ask you even further for you, either your more personal in terms of, you know, other lessons that you're going to take away, you've continued to take away from him, or just his legacy in general. If we had to tell someone the legacy of Jesse Jackson that we see every day now, how would you define and share that?
So I'm going to use Reverend Jackson's tactics again and not answer that question, but give you something that I think will be better for your audience. These are quotes that Reverend Jackson gave me and our staff that are useful today. One, you can't teach what you don't know. You can't lead where you don't go. Number two, you can't give off heat if you're not on fire. Number three, the poor pay more. Number four, when I look at patches of quilt, they are all disparate. They're different colors, they're raggedy, but when you sew them together in a thread of justice, then you have now a quilt that will give warmth to the person under it. Lastly, democracy does not percolate, democracy does not trickle downwardly. It percolates upwardly.
And that is Gary Flowers. Thank you so much for taking the time today and detailing his life in the way that you did, and just making sure that you made time for our audience to do so. We cannot say thank you enough for taking this time today. Thank you.
Thank you. You can always call on me, Brother Eugene.
And I will. You'll hear from me again. Okay, you will
right.
hear from me again. Thank you so much. I know there are going to be other people reaching out to you today, and my best to you as you remember your mentor as well,
And I will
sir.
close with these words, in the words of Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr. Keep hope alive.
Yes, sir. All right, you take care, sir. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
And what a gift that was, to be able to hear from someone who directly was mentored by the now late Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr. We say this as we need to take a quick break. On the other side of this, stick with us here for Live Impact News, because as I said, Reverend Al Sharpton will be holding a press conference, we believe, at the top of 11 o'clock, and we're going to take you to that as it happens. In the meantime, we're also following that trial that we brought to you yesterday with opening statements out of Georgia with the father of a teenage boy who's now been accused of killing multiple people at a high school there. The father facing nearly 30 charges in that case. We have more on that right after the break. Okay, thank you for sticking with us here for Live Impact News. Right now, we're going to go down to Georgia, where the trial is underway for Colin Gray. He is the father who has been accused of nearly 30 counts after his son allegedly went into a school outside of Atlanta and killed 4 people and injured several others. Prosecutors are saying that the father gave the son a gun as a gift, although that child, he knowingly knew, had issues of mental health, etc., prior to that. And his defense is saying, hey, he should not be responsible for that as a parent. This trial now is going into its second day after opening statements began just yesterday. Again, Colin Gray there in the courtroom. He faces 29 counts, including 2 counts of second-degree murder and 2 counts of involuntary manslaughter. Let's go ahead and give you a live look inside of the courtroom.
She did receive screening for PTSD.
And can you just tell us what you mean by washout of the arm?
To clean out any debris that might be left in the arm to prevent infection.
Does that aid in the healing of the injury?
Yes,
you also indicated that she was screened for PTSD.
Yes,
and what was the result of that screening?
the result was positive.
And that means that she had screened that she did have PTSD.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, we are going to come back to that. I told you that we are waiting for Reverend Al Sharpton to speak. He has just stepped up to the podium, and we're going to turn now to him as he shares about the passing of Reverend Jesse Jackson, who he calls his mentor.
Boy preaching in the Pentecostal church in Brooklyn, New York, Washington Temple Church of God in Christ, and I'd become enticed with what was going on in activism because I was watching Adam Clay Powell on television. My mother brought me to Bishop Washington, our pastor, and he said, no, I can put him with some ministers that's involved. He brought me to Reverend William Jones. And they made me the youth director at 13 years old of Operation Breadbasket under the national director, Reverend Jesse Jackson. Reverend Jackson was about 27, I was 13, and ever since then, for 69 years, we bonded. The last time he spoke in New York, he spoke at the House of Justice for us. I can't think of a time that we were not spending time together. Now, he was a hard taskmaster. He would always get on me about, why are you on this issue? You need to be more studied on this. But he was one who was more responsible than anyone for teaching me activism. On a personal level, my family and I used to spend every Christmas at the Jackson's house. And the last 2 Christmases took my daughters, one who's with us today, to Chicago. We spent Christmas night at Reverend Jackson's house just 5 weeks ago, and last Christmas. We would feed people at the House of Justice and then go to the airport in the afternoon and fly to be with him. So I will always be able to cherish that I spent his last Christmas with him and spent last days even when he could no longer speak well. What I think on a broader level is Jesse Jackson changed American politics. Jesse Jackson changed the civil rights movement. He was a consequential and transformative figure. And he changed New York politics. Let me go in that order. One, it was when Dr. King was killed in '68, he was talking to Jesse Jackson and Ben Branch over the rail at the Lorraine Motel in Memphis. And Reverend Jackson was literally one of the 2 last people to speak to him. I always wondered how much trauma that must have been for him to witness Reverend King's assassination. He never would talk about it too much, but it drove him. He kept saying, we got to keep Dr. King's dream alive. He was 12 years younger than King, as I was 13 years younger than him, and he would always challenge me that your generation's got to do what John Lewis and all of us that were younger than Dr. King did. He kept the movement going by keeping the economic boycotts of Operation Breadbasket going, by dealing with diversity, by fighting for affirmative action. You must remember when the late 70s and 80s, when Reaganism rose and there was this backlash on civil rights, Jesse Jackson took the front with John Lewis and others to restore what Dr. King had done. We romanticized the 60s like they were never challenged. They were challenged. We had to renew the Voting Rights Act every 5 years. We had to deal with state laws. And it was Reverend Jackson that did that into our era of having to deal with racial profiling and driving while black and all. We learned all that from him. It was in 1984, when he ran for president, that he changed the rules that primaries were governed by, where in pre-Jackson, if you ran in New York, for example, and you got 104 delegates and your opponent got 100 delegates, your opponent got all 204 delegates. It was Jesse that made it be, no, you get your 100, they get 104. With him changing it to proportional delegate representation is how Barack Obama was made the nominee. Hillary Clinton won more big states, but he was able to accumulate more delegate votes. So he literally changed the party in 84. And then in 86, the midterm elections changed because he had registered so many new voters that had not been calculated before that many of the states turned, and the U.S. Senate 86 became Democratic control and maintained a lot of the things that we would have lost under the Reagan era because Jesse Jackson registered those voters. In 88, he ran again, got 7 million votes, won the city of New York. It was his 88 race where he won the city, he lost the state to the caucus, but he won the city of New York, which made us believe in 89 we could win, and we did, by electing David Dinkins. David Dinkins was his coordinator for New York City in 88 and became the mayor in 89 off Jackson votes and the belief we could win it because Jesse Jackson, despite the controversies around him, won the city of New York in 88. So I'm not talking about somebody that just is some removed figure in history. He literally changed American politics, New York politics, and kept the civil rights movement going, and then raised some of us that have been in the forefront in the first part of the 21st century to do what we do. And he's been there with us. When we did George Floyd, he was right there in the church with us when I did the eulogy. He was there with us with Trayvon Martin. He never stopped. I once said to him, you already in history, you've gotten all the honors, why do you keep going? He said, I never learned how to retire. He said, you got to remember how Dr. King was killed at 39 years old. Medgar Evers was killed at 39 years old. Malcolm X was killed at 39. We were never raised to be 40 years old. He said, I woke up one day at 55, there's no retirement plan for us. And he kept going until this morning. So my whole life and the whole country and the world was changed. Don't forget, he went and got hostages from Iraq, hostages from Syria, that no one else could get for this country. Never got the credit he was due. But he said to me that those that need the credit don't deserve it, and those that deserve the credit don't need it. Well, I'm going to make sure as long as I'm alive, he gets the credit, Reverend Jesse Jackson. On this Saturday, our regular Saturday Action Rally will be at the historic Mother Amy Zion Church. It's the church that Frederick Douglass spoke at. It's the church that Sojourner Truth at the altar changed her name from a slave name to Sojourner Truth. It's the church that Madam C.J. Walker's funeral is at, church that Paul Robeson was a member of. His brother was one of the pastors. So in Black History Month, we're going to dedicate the Action Rally this week to Jesse Jackson, which was the last organization he spoke for in the city of New York. Last time in Harlem, when he left the House of Justice, we took him to Sylvia's. And I never forget when he finished, we had to help with the fork. And he wheel me into the kitchen, and he shook hands with all of the people in Sylvia's restaurant, shook hands with him in the kitchen. That's the last time he was here. So we're going to honor him. We're asking all of our city officials to join us there. We are the organization that Dr. Jackson worked with, and we're going to honor him this Saturday. We want all of them to come and give their condolences in a New York salute to Reverend Jesse Jackson. Any questions?
Yeah, Reverend Sharpton, what did he open your eyes to? What did he help you realize that you didn't know or weren't aware of, or a better story?
He opened my eyes in two ways. He opened my eyes that we could make a difference, we could make change, that we could not be cynical. So by him running, as never had been an elected official, with most black elected officials at that time not with him in '84, when he ran and did that, I believed that we could make a difference, we could change laws, and which is why I went from just being bitter to trying to be better and be able to help change the system by not just fighting the system, but fighting it inside and outside at the same time. What he did for me personally, I was born and raised in Brooklyn. My father left when I was 10. Unlike many other ministers that I looked up to, I didn't come from a high pedigree, nice family with my father and grandfather and great-grandfather preachers. My father left. Jesse was born out of wedlock. He taught me, his slogan was, "I am somebody." It's not how you're born, it's where you go with it. So he made me believe even a kid on welfare in Brownsville, Brooklyn, could be somebody because of Jesse Jackson taught me that. Look what he did, born out of wedlock in Greenville, South Carolina. If he could do it, I could do it. It's easy for a preacher that's got PhD and his daddy was a big preacher and granddaddy. It's easy for him to do it. It wasn't easy for Jesse. And he taught me that it didn't have to be easy for me, but I can make it anyway.
Good morning, Reverend Sharpton. I was just looking at some of your archival video this morning. One of them that just popped up was the March of 1995 against the social service cuts against Governor Pataki. Just what do you remember? Take us back to that day and what you remember about how powerful that bid was with Reverend Jackson.
In 1995, they had cut the budget. Pataki had just been elected in '94, and I decided we were going to do a 10-day walk from New York to Albany. And we started at the Canaan Baptist Church where Wyatt T. Walker was pastor, then Dr. King's aide, and we'd walk a mile and a half a day. Reverend Jackson flew in and said, "I'm going to start the march with y'all and finish with y'all." And I said to him, "Oh, you're not doing all 10 days?" He said, "I'm not overweight, you need to walk." So we would laugh about that. And he met us in Albany, and we marched on George Pataki and got a lot of the legislation restored. That's how much he had local impact. He worked a lot with 1199, he worked with National Action Network, but he would call me. We used to talk 6 o'clock every morning. He would call me and say, "What are y'all doing about this referendum?" I said, "How do you know about that?" But he was constantly kept his hand on the pulse on what was going on around the country.
Reverend Sharpton, can you speak to how he was a bridge between generations, Dr. King's generation, your generation, and the generations today of the social justice movement?
I think that Jesse Jackson was a bridge that was not given credit for. He was the youngest person on Dr. King's staff, so he was attractive to people like me that was a generation behind him, because he was more hip. He used to wear a Martin Luther King medallion. That's where I got that from. And he used to wear a vest. I never saw him wear a suit and tie until about 1972. And he had a big afro. So he wasn't the style of the conservative preachers like Dr. King was. And he then was able to understand our generation of saying no justice, no peace, rather than I am somebody. And he was the bridge that would say, but let us get something done. And he would be there. So whether it was in the 70s and 80s where we were fighting around the issues of Howard Beach and Yusef Hawkins, which he came in and visited the funeral home with me at Yusef Hawkins, or then later in the 21st century, if it was Trayvon Martin, he came and stood with us. He would stand behind us as much as he would lead us, but he would stand behind us. I used to say he's leading from the back now, because he'd be there. And I think that he was never threatened by those older than him or younger than him. He just wanted us to keep our eyes on the prize.
And what about his commitment to peaceful protest and peaceful change at a time when there was a lot of violence?
He was adamant that we always keep nonviolence, because he said you're going to, first of all, he said you must have the moral standing that those we're fighting don't have. And if you become as immoral as them, not caring about life and the like, then you're not fighting a cause, you're fighting for who can have more power. So he definitely would always say that, and he would always say to me, if he heard I was getting ready to do something, Al, make sure that there is no violence. Make sure that you don't step outside of Dr. King's principles. And I think he also would always reprimand us about language, not only violence in terms of physical, but your language must communicate justice, not revenge. He was very, very hard on me about that.
Brad, good morning. What would you say to those in the media, elected officials, others who are efforting to define Jesse Jackson's legacy in depth by criticism, controversies that he had during his life, as opposed to the lifetime of accomplishments that you talked about briefly?
I think that there will be those that will raise the controversies, and they will raise some of the things that they would consider negative. But Reverend Jackson had a saying that he used to tell me that became something I lived by. He said, turn your scars into stars. And they can raise the controversies, but the fact that they've got to raise them at all means that he made his point. He made effect. Nobody thought a kid born out of wedlock on Haney Street in South Carolina would be where he was. So sometime when you're climbing up steep mountains, you might slip and skid your knee. But the story is he climbed that mountain.
Good morning, and thank you for having us. I wanted to ask if there was anything from the Reverend's legacy you hope the new generation in the Democratic Party, the civil rights movement heed going forward.
I think that what I would hope they heed is that we continue to protect the right to vote, that we protect the Voting Rights Act, and that we protect the economic movements of not having an imbalance where the super rich get richer at the expense of the poor, and that we remain rainbow, multicultural, that we fight for immigration rights and civil rights, that we deal with policing and deal with vice. And I think that he represented that. We cannot take the rainbow out of the movement. We cannot take the nonviolence out, but we must protect the right to vote. Everything Dr. King and Reverend Jackson stood for is at risk right now. Supreme Court is weighing right now Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. Right now we're seeing what's going on with ICE and deportation. So we have the challenge not to mourn Jesse Jackson, but we need to use our mornings, which is what we're going to do Saturday, to say there must be a movement. He would not want us to have sanctimonious mornings if we weren't going to get up and do the work.
Reverend Chuckson, so many speeches over the years, so many important quotes. Which one is the most significant to you or the most personal in terms of what you remember?
I think that his 84 Democratic Convention speech, Our Time Has Come, was a classic because it gave us hope. I think that when he came back in 88, Keep Hope Alive was a classic. There's so many, but Reverend Jackson had, the last time he was at, time before last, he was at the House of Justice, he had a book of sermons and that he had come out with. And that's when I knew he was stumbling and had Parkinson's. And I asked him to sign the book to me. He could only do the first J. And I keep that book at home, a book of all of his sermons. But he couldn't even sign his name. But he still came to Harlem to do what he could do.
Reverend Sharpton, one other question. In terms of his unfinished business around the economic justice issues like food insecurity, healthcare for people that he touched on at many points in his life, what do you say to that?
I say that we've got to keep fighting. We cannot make mockery with just mourning him and letting it go. And DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, which has now been wiped out by this present administration, that was Jesse Jackson saying we've got to diversify boardrooms, diversify employment for blacks, for women, for browns, for LGBTQ. So we are seeing at a stage where everything he fought for is at risk. And if we want to mourn him, we've got to preserve what he fought for.
Thank you.
So what is the plan of action to defend voting rights?
Well, I think the plan has to be, how did we get voting rights in the first place? And that is mobilizing, marching, nonviolent protests. But the thing we have that they didn't have in 65, we have enough people in the Senate and the House to re-legislate if we come out and vote. If we come out in the right numbers, a member of National Action Network named Hakeem Jeffries will be the Speaker of the House and can call the hearings and find out what's really going on in ICE. So every time it looks hard to me, I think about how hard it was for Jesse when he was a student leader in North Carolina, how hard it was for Dr. King. We don't have the right to complain. They turned the country upside down, and they didn't even have social media. You know, Dr. King didn't know what a cell phone was, didn't know what TikTok is. We got all of these things to work with. Question is, are we going to work with them? All right, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And that is Reverend Al Sharpton speaking about his mentor, the now late Reverend Jesse Jackson. You know, before we heard from Al Sharpton there, we heard from Gary Flowers, who had worked with Reverend Jackson for years in the Rainbow Push Coalition, being the vice president, also national field director. And we heard a lot of similarities there between the two, both of them mentored by the same man, who, again, the story today is that Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr. has died. He was 84 years old. No official cause of death has been released. We know at least a decade ago, or about a decade ago, he had been diagnosed with Parkinson's, and then last year he was hospitalized with a rare neurological disorder that some experts say can at times be misdiagnosed as Parkinson's. So we have not gotten that as of yet, but we do know that there will be services that will take place publicly in Chicago, and the Rainbow Push Coalition will be sharing that information. But today we expect to hear from people all across the country. There have been tributes already pouring in, sharing words, sharing memories about Reverend Jackson and what he has meant to this country, what he has meant to so many different aspects of our modern day society. Obviously a civil rights icon and leader, and you heard from Reverend Sharpton there. He took that movement and carried it for decades as well. But politically, the impact there, the politics culturally, there's a lot of ways in which I believe we're probably going to be hearing, not just today, but in the coming days, about the legacy and impact of Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr. Right now, your time is 11:25. We are going to take another break now. But on the other side of this, we'll have more here on Live Impact News. We're going to go back to that trial in Georgia to let you get a live look at the case that's being made against Colin Gray, the father whose son shot and killed, according to prosecutors, several people in a school outside of Atlanta. We'll be right back. We're back with more live Impact News. Let's go right to the courtroom in Georgia as the case right now is being made against Colin Gray, the father of a teenage boy who went into a school outside of Atlanta, and prosecutors say shot and killed 4 people, injured others there. The father in that case, again, Colin Gray, is now being accused of 29 counts in this related situation. So let's go ahead and let you listen in live into the trial.
Looks like 14, or sorry, military time, 2:49.
Okay. And again, was he transported also by ambulance?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And when you assessed him, how old was he?
15, I believe.
And what did you observe about his physical injuries?
Looks like he had, and I'm reading from this, along the lower aspect of the extremity. I'm sorry, I'm reading the wrong thing.
It's okay.
What I tell you exactly. Oh, there we go. Kind of a, not really a laceration, but an abrasion in the right lower extremity, and says a wound to the lateral posterior right thigh that was bandaged. So yeah.
Okay. And when you say it wasn't really, it was an abrasion versus a laceration, kind of tell us what the difference is.
Lacerations, depending on the depth, are in some cases something that can be sutured. A lot of times we don't use laceration when it's something that's not very deep.
And as far as his injuries, did he have metal fragments as well in his body?
Let's see. Yes.
And what treatment did you provide to Mr. Beaver?
His treatment was we bandaged the area where he had the abrasion. That was the first thing we did, and I just want to make sure. He was also x-rayed to make sure there weren't any
like fractures or
right, because of
Did you also irrigate his wounds?
we did,
Okay.
and he was also given a 600 milligram ibuprofen.
And what is the purpose of irrigating wounds?
Any kind of wound that you have, irrigating just gives a less chance for infection.
And did the metal fragments also remain in his body?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And was that a similar reason because you did not want to disrupt the tissue anymore? Okay. And was he able to leave the hospital that day?
Yes, he was.
And was he similarly given the ability to talk to someone from behavioral health because he had been through that traumatic experience?
Yes, ma'am. When I looked at the records, it looks as if he also spoke to behavioral health, and they gave him information on outpatient care if necessary.
Thank you. I don't have any further questions for you. Thank you, Mr. Carter.
No question, Your Honor.
Thank you, sir. Very good job. All right, thanks, sir.
State calls next witness.
State calls Special Agent Jerry Oldman. Judge, can we approach before the next witness, just about scheduling? Go ahead and have you raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm any testimony you're about to give in the matter now pending before the court is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? All right. And if I can start by just having you introduce yourself, and if you'll spell your name for the court reporter.
I am Jarrell Mann. I'm currently a special agent with the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. My first name is spelled Jarriel. Last name is Mann.
All right. And tell us about what region you work in and what your role is there.
I'm currently assigned to Region 10. That is the Atlanta office. We do a lot of OISs and also fraud investigations and stuff like that.
Okay. And is OIS officer involved shooting?
Yes.
Okay. So y'all stay busy in the Atlanta office of the GBI, I'm sure. And even though you generally work out of Atlanta, did you provide assistance in the Appalachia High School shooting investigation on September 4th of 2024?
Yes, I did.
All right. Where did you first respond in assisting in this investigation?
Of course, it came out as an active shooter, so we responded to Appalachia High School.
Okay.
And then from there, we were divided in to do investigative facts.
Gotcha. And so from the school, where were you sent to go do follow-up investigation?
I was sent to the hospital to conduct interviews and speak to the victims and collect any evidence and also check the status of possible victims at the hospital.
Okay. And was that the Northeast Georgia Medical Center here in Barrow County that you went to?
Yes, it was.
Okay. And while you were there, did you specifically speak with Ronaldo Vega?
Yes, I did.
Tell me about what his demeanor was like when you met with him.
Well, when I spoke with Ronaldo Vega, of course his guardians were there. He seemed kind of distant and seemed like he was in shock.
Okay.
So I had to give him kind of a moment to kind of brace himself before I spoke with him.
Gotcha. So he was a little held back when he was talking to you initially?
I did see tears.
Okay.
And he seemed like he was visibly upset at the time.
Gotcha. And I'm going to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibits 100 through 102. Did you have the opportunity to photograph Ronaldo's injuries while you were there?
Yes, I did.
If you'll just glance at this and tell me if those are fair and accurate depictions of the photographs that you took of Ronaldo and his injuries.
Yes, they are.
All right. And Judge, at this time we would ask to tender and publish State's Exhibits 100, 101, and 102.
All right, 100 through 102 are admitted.
We're going to pull those up. They should show up on the screen behind you as well as in front of you. And this is State's Exhibit 100. Will you just tell us what we're looking at there?
That looks to appear to be his inner thigh. I don't know if that's his left or right, but that's his inner thigh that he showed me.
Okay. And Judge, I think it states 102 has his face. Is that correct? Yes. Okay. So we would ask that states 102 not be published by the media.
All right. My understanding to the media is that 102 has Ronaldo's face, and you're not to photograph or record or broadcast 102.
All right, so this is 100. We'll show 101 first. And what are we looking at here?
This is his arm. It was, I guess it was injuries or lacerations that were shown to me that I documented, took pictures of as well.
Okay, and last we'll just show 102.
And this right here is just the overall photo, but that's a good line in hospital over there.
All right, does that picture kind of accurately represent Ronaldo's demeanor that you saw?
Yes.
Okay. While you were there, did you also have the opportunity to speak with Jackson Beaver?
Yes, I did.
All right. And did you also have the opportunity to photograph Jackson's injuries?
Yes, I did.
And I'm going to show you if the marked states 103, 104, and 105. And I'll go ahead and ask you, Jackson, we recently saw him testify. Was he just kind of more of a upbeat kid at his baseline?
Yes, he was.
Okay.
He was very cooperative.
Okay. And do you recognize the images in those photographs?
Yes, I do.
Are those fair and accurate depictions of the photographs you took of Jackson Beaver?
Yes.
All right, and Judge, we would ask to tender states 103 through 105, and I believe it's 105, right, that has Jackson Beaver's face in it, so we'd ask that not be published to the media.
All right, any objection to 103 through 5? All right, 103 through 5 are admitted and just announced when you get to 105.
Okay, so this is 103. Can you tell us what we're looking at here?
This is a laceration, appears to be to, I want to say it's like lower leg.
Okay.
To me, but I'd say.
And next we'll pull up 104.
And these are just, I guess, lacerations or, I don't know if it's fragments from some sort on his calf muscles that he showed me.
Okay, so did he have kind of a spattering of superficial injuries that you observed on his leg?
Yes.
Okay. And this last one is going to be the one that has his face in it, and that's 105. Is that Jackson Beaver?
Yes, it's showing him in history.
All right, thank you. And did your time at the hospital interviewing these individuals, taking photographs of them, did that conclude your role in assisting in this investigation?
Yes, it did.
All right, well, I have no further questions. I'll come grab those exhibits for you.
Cross. No question. There's no cross, you're free to go, sir. All right, ladies and gentlemen, due to some witness scheduling issues, we're going to go ahead and break for lunch presently. It's called at 11:45. We'll be in recess till 12:45. Again, get on social media or the media. We'll talk about the case we're doing research. 12:45.
Looks like they're going to go on a quick break there, and so are we at this point. Thank you for watching us here on Live Impact News. Again, if you're watching us on YouTube Live, we appreciate that, but we also would love for you to consider downloading our streaming app, 13 News Now Plus. You can get it for free on Roku, Amazon Fire, and Apple TV, and there you won't just have access, obviously, here to watch this broadcast live, but you'll be able to see so many other elements of content outside of just even your newscast, but special things strictly for the Plus app. So consider doing that if you will. We're going to take a quick break here. We'll be back with a little bit more here on Live Impact News. Welcome back here for Live Impact News. Just got this into the newsroom here. We have an update on a shooting that took place in Newport News over the Valentine's Day weekend. It actually took place on Valentine's Day about 12:15 in the morning. A person was shot in J. Clyde Morris Boulevard there. It was 21-year-old Isaiah Nichols of Newport News. This information coming to us from the police department here just moments ago. And now we're told that a person of interest has been detained and identified. Elvis Barrow of Hampton. He's now been charged with first-degree murder, use of a firearm in commission of a felony, and possession of a firearm by a convicted felon. That shooting, again, happened on Valentine's Day just after midnight, and they found 21-year-old Isaiah Nichols, who died there at the scene after they found him in that area. And so, again, a person of interest has been detained. Elvis Barrow now faces several charges, including first-degree murder. If you do know anything about that case, you are asked to call the Newport News Police Department, or you can call the crime line at 1-888-LOCK-YOU-UP. Now to a story that really just tragedy on the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel. The driver who went overboard while driving on the bridge tunnel over the weekend on Sunday and died. His name, Ronnie Andrews, 61 years old, of Robersonville, North Carolina. Our team had talked to his wife, who said how much she will miss him. And after this tragedy, it makes at least the 15th crash over into the water of truckers who have traveled on the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel. So far, officials have said that wind did not play a factor in this, but they're still trying to determine what exactly caused that crash on Sunday morning. Our Jemiah Beatty was able to speak with one of the officials with the bridge tunnel. We're going to play the interview that she had just hours ago.
At this point, walk us through where this investigation stands right now.
Okay, so as far as the investigation of the scene itself, our officers have already, taken their measurements and reviewed the scene to gather whatever evidence that they could possibly glean. The next steps for them, as far as the investigation goes, is one of our officers that is certified in doing motor carrier inspections will go down and review the tractor trailer itself to look and see if there's any potential mechanical defects that they can, ascertain. Sometimes these vehicles are also equipped with a like an electronic data recorder, black box, so to speak, like an airplane would have. Sometimes we're able to retrieve that. Hopefully we will be able to. In this particular case, it'll give you some information about what was happening with the vehicle and the driver at the time of the accident. We don't know yet that will be something that's available to us. Occasionally it's not covered with the vehicle, and sometimes it gets damaged by having been in the salt water. So that'll be the next step. Mr. Andrews is currently with the Norfolk medical examiner, and they'll be conducting their autopsy and coming up with their cause of death. I can tell you that process usually takes several months, so that will be a while before we're able to get that type of information. And that may reveal that there was some kind of medical emergency or something like that.
No, this is all really good insight. Are you at all able to share what possibly led to him going overboard yet, or no?
So not really. I mean, we don't typically release like a preliminary investigation or a preliminary cause. In this case, some of the potential causes don't seem to apply, but we still have so much to look at in regards to the vehicle itself or the medical examiner's report that it's really too early to speculate.
What's the possible timeline of this investigation?
Well, as I said a minute ago, I think that it could be several months before we eventually get back the report from the medical examiner's office. And so it could be quite a while before we have a definitive answer.
And I believe you said this earlier, it just kind of glitched. Just kind of walk us through possible challenges that are arising right now while you all kind of search for answers or comb through, clues in this case.
I'm not sure what you mean by possible challenges.
Like, I know earlier from what I heard before it glitched out, you said black box, but in the water with evidence it could possibly, it kind of glitched on me there.
Oh,
Just want to make sure I have that clear.
yeah. Well, sometimes, yeah. Well, so the biggest challenge is just going to be able to get all the information that you could possibly want in order to conduct the investigation. So hopefully the black box was on the truck when it was recovered. Sometimes that piece of the truck doesn't get recovered, and then sometimes it's damaged by salt water, in which case it's difficult or impossible to get the data.
Okay, that's the part I need. Thank you so much. And then what would you want the public to understand about investigations like this while they wait for answers?
Well, we've seen the speculation and stuff on social media, just like everybody else. I'd encourage them to just be patient and allow the process to move forward so we can get, the real answers. Um, there, it's a difficult process, I understand, and everybody wants to know, right away, but it does take quite a bit of time, unfortunately.
And just to throw this last one in, are there anything about this investigation you're ruling out as far as potential causes?
So probably the only thing that comes immediately to mind in that regard is the weather. I know quite a few people were speculating that there might have been inclement weather at the time that was a potential cause, but that definitely was not the case. The conditions here were very, mild at the time of the accident, so we don't think that had, anything to do with the accident. Whether it was, driver inattentiveness, fatigue, or a medical issue or something like that, remains to be seen.
And as far as this investigation, I know you said there's been a lot of speculation. Where, trusted sources for people to kind of lean on to kind of rule that out. Do you mind kind of just relaying where they can go to make sure it's not, false information, but the facts?
Well, I mean, we release press releases during events like this to all of the mainstream media and the local market. So I think if they pay attention to those channels, they should be able to get the correct information. But I just wouldn't rely on rumors and social media for all of my news.
And there you have it. That was Jeremiah Beatty speaking with an official there for the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel. This days after that deadly crash with a truck driver going overboard into the water there. Again, according to our records, after we had requested information from the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel back in 2023, there were at that time 14 crashes like this dating back to the 80s, and now this would be at least 15 in that. In all of those, only 2 people survived crashes into the water. Certainly devastating, but they're still trying to figure out exactly what led to it, as you heard there in that interview. Let's take a look now. We have a few live shots that we want to show you as we wrap up here for Live Impact News. This is a time lapse showing you earlier today on the Virginia Beach ocean front. You can see all of that fog that was out there. It just was not pretty. Made for quite the travel this morning if you were driving out on the roads to work after a holiday weekend. But the good news is this is what it looks like right now. Much, much better. It looks like the beach that we are all familiar with the skies clear there along the ocean front. So hopefully your commute as you're heading out to lunch or whatever you may be doing now is much better. I'll tell you what, for those who are down south in the Big Easy and New Orleans, obviously, they are having a good time. We are watching the Mardi Gras parade happening here on Fat Tuesday. You're seeing all of the people lined up there down in the Big Easy. I was just down there visiting family not long ago, but as you can see, parades are already underway. Thousands of people flock down to the New Orleans area and Louisiana each year for this celebration. I can tell you, as someone who 95% of his family lives in Louisiana, is from Louisiana, it's a big deal. My sister used to love getting out of school for Mardi Gras week. But they are going to have their great time with everything that's happening there. And if you're able to get down there and you can enjoy that, we hope that you have a safe time as well. With that, we want to say thank you. Your time right now is 11:58, and we are up here for Live Impact News on 13 News Now Plus. Again, thank you if you're watching us live, whether on YouTube. We appreciate that, but we'd love for you to download our streaming app, 13 News Now Plus. You can find it on Roku, Amazon Fire, and on Apple TV. Up next, you will see 13 News Now at noon, but for now, thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. Eugene Daniel and Sarah Calloway here. See you in the morning.